What's up, everybody? Hope you're doing well. So, again, before I begin, go to wearemetalwearefamily.com and purchase some coffee or some tea or some coffee mugs or some t-shirts. There's a lot that's there. So please go and visit and see what you like. But you're going to love the coffee. There's such a variety of coffee that we offer. And I think that situation is just going to get better. There's also tea, which I'm a tea drinker. So please, wearemetalwearefamily.com and act like you're supposed to act as a musician, as a metal fan, as a metal head. Anyways, so today is a little interesting subject. So I'm in the process. My oldest is going to be graduating from high school, going into college to follow his father in music. And of course, I'm excited about it because he's going to kill it, absolutely kill it, because he's already been prepared. You know, he's been around musicians his whole life. He grew up in the studio with me, and he loves music, and so he's going to follow in those steps and write and produce and engineer and all that other stuff. So kind of cool. Anyways, in the process of that, for graduation, you know, there's going to be a party, and we have to come up with pictures and things of that nature. So, man, it's hard, really hard, because he's a man. Now, he's a man years ago because of how wise and commonsensical he is, and just fantastic child. I love my son, Brendan, and I couldn't be more proud of who he's becoming. But anyways, let's put that aside. That's not what the video's about. But I wanted you to know the mode that I'm in before I continue. So, in the process of that, I remember being the same age and being the type of person that I am. You know, I've always rode on a certain path, or the path that I'm going is directed by God, but then I end up controlling a lot of how that looks along the way. So I'm thinking of these things because when your child ends up having, you know, to leave and create his own life, you remember creating yours. It's a bit scary. For many, many years, I was one of those people that licked the blade. Now, for those of you who don't know what that means, or if you do know what that means, well, licking the blade means that eventually you like being close to the edge, you know? Now, my faith in the Lord has brought me to on a journey. But some things about getting to know the Lord, you can do it certain ways. I in particular did it differently because honesty with my Creator, honesty with where I was at was important. I had already gone through this religious type of upbringing, in the sense where the church that our family went to, or my mother and the three of us, I'm sorry if you guys are hearing this, but sorry, this is the way that it is. It was religious. Now, there were genuine people trying to do genuine things, but it was religious. And that religiousness was something I witnessed over and over and over again. And it again, genuine people, there were some people that were good people, but their rhetoric bared no fruit. What I mean is it didn't really... I was motivated by a few things, mostly guilt. And once I accepted this guilt, then I would feel bad about the things that I was doing, or feel bad that I wasn't doing the things that they were telling me that I should be doing. It was interesting. But what it ended up doing to me is hurting me, actually. Hurting me in my life, and realizing, giving this perception of who Christ was, in which he was not. And there are still people that believe, that I know, that believe in this type of Christ that is so misinterpreted from Scripture because of religiousness. My view of things had changed a bit. I had to get into this place of like, you know what? I'm going to be who I am, and I'm going to have to find out who God is on my own, because these things that are being said, once I started doing just a tiny bit of research into Christianity, realizing that there was other ideas, other views of things, and I thought, wow, one, I'm a musician, guys, and music brings you to other places, and it did. God used music to bring me to other places. He wanted to use music, he wanted to use a certain type of way to get me out of the religiousness of what I was facing. And I know that sounds whatever, you guys can determine or figure out or have an opinion about whatever that is, but so I decided that I'm going to find out from God who he is, while doing my life in which the directions of my desires, not in the bad sense of desires, but where I wanted to go. I wanted to go into music. I wanted to go into those avenues, the artistic way. I wanted to find out from him on my own, not through these other people that were giving me this weird, twisted view of who God is. And boy, you find out all kinds of things. And I went on spiritual journeys. I went on all kinds of different things. And to find out who God is, for him to reveal to me himself on who he is. And most of my lifestyle was that. It was a musician. Smoked a ton of cigarettes, wrote a lot of songs, and kind of trailed a certain, on the edge type of a thing to find out. And I guess my thought pattern with this was, I want to look and entertain a little bit of what the world had to offer to me, along with trying to live a good life. Now, my mother was a type of person, I grew up with good morals, at least. I cared for people. I cared about their well-being. I cared about their outcome. I cared about, those types of things. And I thought, well, that was never something that I struggled with. Sometimes, I was a very angry person. So I had lots of love and compassion for people, unless they crossed me. That's a little about my dad, So, but anybody that grew up around me or during those times or where I was going through, they know what I'm talking about. But I needed to find out, because I wanted to look at, and it ended up being God's way of me being able to see the way that the world is with his protection. And some of you know exactly what I'm talking about. But I'm getting to a certain point and where we all need to be. But for now, I trailed this line. I licked the blade. It was a blade. It's extremely sharp. But you know what? I figured I know exactly where to lick this blade and I'm not going to get cut. And I will say, because of the mercy of God, I didn't get cut too often. I mean, I did. And sometimes it was pretty deep. But I wasn't severed. And I would never have been severed because of how God is. But, you know, I had so many points of my life where licking that blade, you get a little bit of that blade and you end up cutting yourself and you end up, ooh, that hurts. But he wanted to keep showing me how the world works. That it's deceptive. That it's subtle. That it wants to chew you up and spit you out after it's beaten you to death. Now, because of the things that we love, we want to debate what it is that is the world. What is its contribution to our life? What we do love and what we don't love. Now, there are things that the world offers that we do love, and we want to debate that it's okay to have in our lives. My thing is trailing that for so many years, licking that blade for so many years, being things that are permissible and things that are, it's okay. It's not gonna kill my faith. It's not going to do whatever, but it's human nature to do the wrong thing before you do the right thing. We're gonna make the wrong decision before the right one. And there are people out there that just, they believe that they make the right decision all the time, and those people are called, everybody. They think they're great. They're good enough to where I know what I'm doing. Anyways, so I trailed this and licked this blade for many, many years. And there's some things that I'm glad that I did, because I needed to, one, you got to see the difference of the world, and eventually you got to get to yourself to a place where, and God will bring you there, to where you do not like getting cut anymore. In fact, it gets to a place where you get cut so often and so deep that you want nothing to do with that world. And I pray that you, if you have not, get to that place. Because there are people that are stuck in their lives continuing to lick the blade, and it's been way, way too long. And they're thinking, because of the things that they do love, the justifications on that it's okay to love these things, whatever it may be. You see, we're in a place in the world where I know that people, they see the danger, they see the darkness, they see all these different things, they see this evil that's rampant throughout the world, and they want to say, well, I'm not going to be a part of that. Not knowing that most of the life is a part of that. The everyday mantra of doing your life, it consists of what the world has to offer you, and you cannot be without it. And you've justified it, and you've said, no, well, this is just the way that the world goes. It's just the way that the world is. What are you going to do about that, Jamie? Me? I'm not going to do anything about it. We're going to talk about what you are going to do about it. Because we got into a place where we're like, I am a good Christian and God's not going to, allow these things to go on. He's going to come swooping in and he's going to save us from ourselves, from the world, from all these different things. And although that sounds wonderful and very Marvel-like, or, pick whatever great superhero you want, as if God follows those types of patterns and going to save us all from these things, not any biblical whatsoever. If you notice throughout the Bible, any tragedy that any of his people faced, he wanted everyone to take a very good look on how, and this is a paraphrase, but any of these things that anybody was facing in large groups, his people, not just the Hebrews, but even the Gentiles, the different people that God had saved that were his. What we faced is humanity and the things, how should I say, our flesh. The societies would build up to a certain point to the place where it would completely collapse and life would get extremely difficult. Tyranny would take over, and we've talked about this many, many times. I've said this, I don't know, probably 1 million to the people that I know and know me. But you know what? It gets to these places, and we're in this place. The cliff is right here, and the society has licked the blade so much and loved this licking the blade, meaning the church has loved licking this blade for so long where it cannot decipher what the world is and what God is, what's permissible, what's not permissible, what's okay for us to do and what's not okay for us to do. The world is so much embedded in us, but we still have this fantasy view that God's going to save us from this. But he's always taken those instances for every single person, all of his people, to look at itself in the mirror, not before the world has taken over, but after. After the world does its business, and God either prevents us from dying or doesn't prevent us from dying. We just lose tons of people. We have to take a very good look in the mirror and go, no, this is how sinful you are. Not what you believe and you think, but the way that God's word has described what sinful nature means. We have this new version because of this prosperous life. No matter where you are, especially in the United States, it doesn't matter. The poorest of poor still can be fat, could be chubby because there's too much to eat. There's plenty to eat. There's, no matter what, there are tragedies. Please, let's be mature. Let's say, Jamie, there are exceptions. Yes, let's be mature and say there are exceptions. But around the world, there's lots and lots of suffering. But in lots of places, there's still food. There's still things. In the worst case scenario, the world has embedded itself so much so. You're addicted to the thing that's in your hand. You're addicted to the thing that you're watching me on this with. Part of what I say, I started off with my son, Brendan. He's going to be graduating from high school, going into college, and I remember him as a child, as a baby, just coming out, and now he's leaving. And I know the parents that have experienced these types of things, the things that roll in your head are just unbelievable. But today, the average child that graduates from high school into the world is already an addict to something. That's the world that you live in. And when you're teaching your kids, if you allow them to have phones, if you allow them to have tablets, if you allow them to have all these things, you've contributed to an addiction in which has taken over. Calm down, and listen. You've contributed to an addiction that has taken over your child, and now you have to deal with your child as you would an addict and try to teach them about the world. You know what's going to happen is, I like what's being done on this thing right here, Dad, and I want to do this first. And whatever influence that you've had on them, whatever anything about Christ that you've taught them, they're going to be licking the blade of this world and finding out what life and what God is really true. You know, we think that we're smarter than this, even as Christian people, as followers of Christ, in this world, in this prosperous world that has spoiled us and tainted our minds so much that we look through the wrong lens and we think that our life is not taken over by the world, and it is. Jamie, you have covered this, I don't know how many times, because we don't get it. We don't understand it. You know, there was a saying, we don't know who actually said it, but I would love to give the credit to the person that actually said this. I just don't know, because there's some argument about who it may have been. But it is easier to fool a man than to convince them that they've been fooled. If you try to say, like, okay, this world is actually fooling you, you're actually believing things that you're not supposed to. Especially, you know, like, for instance, the lovely subject of the news. You all know that it's actually lying to you, but it's the source in which you go. Something happens and you're like, let's go to the news and find out what they're saying. And this person says this, and this person says this. Well, what do you think? And we're going to bring in this person, this celebrity, because what they may have something that's important to say about this. So we're going to listen to them, and you're like, oh. And then the Christian pastor of some whatever, they're like, well, we got to give all sides, so here's a pastor that comes and said, well, I think that this is what the deal is. And, you know, God says this and God says that. And all of a sudden we feel better. Like we have all the information now because we looked at this, because someone at some point said that these are the guides for your life. If something's going on in the world, go to these sources and find out your opinion. Find out what it is that you're supposed to think. And that's what we do. The world is our guide, not the scripture. You don't realize how much that's actually true. And for me to be able to convince you is harder. It's more difficult for me to say that you've been, sorry. See how crazy this actually is? It's harder for you to understand that you've been fooled than to just fool you. That's what the world's decided. It's going to fool you because it's easy. It's better to not understand that you're licking the blade, that your faith is licking the blade, that your way of life can be more defined as a follower of the world than of Christ. But Jamie, we're all sinners. We're all fall short of the glory of God. We all, yeah. I guarantee you, if you were to sit down and go through the routine of your life and you were honest, you're not fooling yourself, or you're not pretending that you would go throughout your day and determine how much attention that you give your faith in God, that you communicate with Him, that your talents are guided by His Word. It's impossible to live this Christian life. It is impossible. That's why Christ had to die. You know, a lot of the people that I grew up with in this religiousness, I'm sorry, guys. Sorry. Not really, but we think that we have this power to guide our Christian lives, to obtain and get some type of faith, and we're going to work our way through this life, and somehow we're going to come out on top, because God is waiting for us to do it ourselves. No. So let's go over this. Matthew 16:24. I just shared these recently. Then Jesus said to his disciples, "If anyone wishes to follow me as my disciple, he must deny himself, set aside the selfish interests, and take up his cross, expressing a willingness to endure whatever may come." Not what you think is okay to come and not to come, or whatever you are okay with in your life, or when you're not okay with your life, or the things that you're watching right now you shouldn't watch, or the, whatever that comes this way because you're deciding Christ, not your decision. And follow me, believing in me, conforming to my example. My example in living, and if need be, suffering, or perhaps dying because of faith in me. Most of you have absolutely no idea what that actually means. I don't know how much that means. But that's what his word is saying. We are in a constant process of understanding we don't get it. And he must repeat himself in the same ways so that we, at some point, that epiphany, that moment in our lives where we realize, whoa, I'm the one in charge. And then once you know that, it's this year upon year upon year of letting that go and accepting whatever comes our way, whatever he wants for us. Not us licking the blade and deciding how much we want this part and how much we're willing to acknowledge God at the same time, and see where that ends up. By the end of it, you're going to have so many scars, so many regrets, so many painful memories, so much loss, so much mind-boggling situations, to where when you surrender and when you've been sufficiently confused, we finally give up and say, "Oh Lord, whatever you want." It's how it happens. And all the people that are in the churches, this religiousness, they have to come to that too. Then they stop pretending with themselves. They stop pretending this religious mantra that God has nothing to do with. He sent his son to destroy that part. If someone was to spend time with you, what kind of person would they become? We need to stop licking the blade and become the people that God wanted us to, that he's always asking us to, that he repeats himself in his word constantly, dying to ourselves, going his way, doing what he wants, not what we want, and not putting ourselves in situations that it's the most comfortable possible place. The comfort zone is what they call it. I need to do this on my terms, what I am comfortable with. And if it gets too intense, I'm not going to go that way because it's too much. If God's bringing you through it, it isn't too much because he's right there with you. God has given me all that I can handle. I don't know what Bible you're reading, but he's supposed to give you things constantly that you cannot handle because you need his help. The point is relying on him. The point is giving up. You know, there are dreams that people have had that they believe that they're supposed to give up. They're the ones that have been in charge of that dream for so long. They've thought of this dream so often, and they thought, the Lord must honor this at some point, and then you're like, and now you're like, I guess I have to let this thing go because I want to be more like God. The problem is when you began that process of that dream, it was yours and not his. His is 10 times better than yours. Surrender. Trust in and rely confidently on the Lord with all your heart. All of it. Do not rely on your own understanding, your own insight, or your understanding. In all your ways, know and acknowledge and recognize him. And he will make the path straight and smooth, removing obstacles that block your way. If you do it his way. There's going to be a battle. There's going to be a fight. You got to let him take that battle and that fight. And you have to watch it happen and trust and rely on him. Can you do that? When we do things God's way, our flesh needs to be destroyed in the process. While it's being destroyed, that concept of licking the blade, that lifestyle that we choose to right alongside with Christ and right alongside with the world, goes away. You begin to hate what you see in the world when you surrender to Christ. You hate it. You want nothing to do with it. You hate all of the processes of the world. That's okay. That's good. That's real good. Anyways, that's what I had to say. It's a bit long, whatever. But I hope that you guys can absorb this. And please remember, stop licking that blade.